In January 2011, Michaela McAreavey, the only daughter of Tyrone GAA boss Mickey Hart, was found strangled in the bathroom of her suite in the resort of Grand Gobe in Mauritius while on honeymoon with her new husband John McAreavey. The subsequent police investigation in Mauritius and the dramatic trial which resulted in the acquittal of the accused was followed by people not alone here in Ireland but all over the world. And one of the most moving aspects of the unfolding story was the dignity with which the Hart and McAreavey families handled the horrific situation in which they found themselves. Now, it is 3 years on, and I'm delighted to say that John McAreavey joins me in studio. John, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Pat. Thank you.
Now, let's go back, if you don't mind, to talk about Michaela, because I met her, I had her on the Late Late Show with her dad, and I understood what a wonderful girl she was. But she captured not alone your heart, but everybody's heart. What was it?
She seemed to be a very popular girl, and I suppose with the profile that Mickey had, when she would have followed Tyrone all through her life, and she was there at her dad's side, so I suppose people would have seen her kind of grow up with Mickey, and maybe people just got to feel as if they got to know Michaela a wee bit more whenever, I suppose, Tyrone started to rise through the ranks. So
yeah, she seemed to be goodness personified, but I'm sure she had her moments.
Oh, absolutely, just a normal girl, really. Like every one of us, good points and bad points. But yeah, fantastic girl, and she was really credit to our family. Yeah.
Now, we all followed the story, and we're not going to rehash what happened, but we know the awful events and you discovering Michaela, the arrests, the trial and so on, and then the acquittal of the two accused. Mm-hmm. It's not over, of course, because no one has been convicted of the killing of Michaela. So where does the case lie now? Yeah,
well, I suppose as the news and the media coverage kind of starts to feel away from it and inevitably moves on to a new news story, I suppose people can think that everything is really dead in the water, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, ever since the acquittal, myself and my sister have worked tirelessly trying to kind of reinvigorate it, and I've been working closely with the Mauritian authorities, kind of keeping the pressure on them and working closely with the PSNA. It's a long and slow process. You really do require a lot of patience because you could get frustrated very easily. But where it is at the minute, there was a fresh police investigation after the trial, so they had to really just start from scratch again. There was a new team brought in. They had to look over all the evidence again. They had to take different witness statements. And then where it is now, they have presented their case to the DPP. Now, I know they're still waiting on certain bits of DNA evidence, but I think it's fair to say that the case last time for the Mauritian authorities, they probably didn't handle it the best they could. They probably felt under a bit of pressure, probably because...
I mean, that particular hotel had a blameless record up to that. And suddenly, no one had ever died in that resort before. In that situation, no visitor had. And suddenly they find themselves on the front pages of newspapers all over the world.
Yeah, well, thankfully, there wasn't an incident of that nature. There was a crime ring going on in the hotel for about 4 or 5 years. Now, what
petty theft?
Petty theft, yeah, from the hotel staff. And obviously, for the PR of a hotel, you never want that there to get out, so they would just deal with it by, if they found employees responsible, they would just ask them to leave, so then it wouldn't be on their records that somebody had got sacked for stealing. But I mean, where it is at the minute, it's with their authorities. I think they're trying to build every angle that they can to ensure that they have everything covered.
Because the acquittal, I mean, when there was an expectation in many quarters that these guys would be found guilty, the acquittal then was a major setback for the authorities who were investigating, the prosecution team and the police, and it really discredited the police effort.
It really did, and I suppose you could look at the defence team and say they did a really good job. The way they went about their business was highly questionable, but at the end of the day, they got their two clients off.
I mean, there was one particular defence person who was the one who brought the video of the two Germans at the checkout or at the reception desk and maintained it was yourself and Michaela, and it wasn't, quite obviously so.
No.
And yet that muddied the waters so much, and it made it appear that things were happening that were not happening between you and Michaela.
Of course. I mean, well, they just turned it into like a sort of drama. You know, in fact, one of the defence lawyers went as far as sending that DVD to the judge at the time. He went as far as going down to the police station and making an official statement that they had to arrest me and to stop the trial immediately. Now, thankfully, over the past few months, they have brought him.
They've dealt with him.
They've dealt with him, through the judicial system over there. But I suppose it gives you a flavour of what you're actually dealing with out there. Yeah. I mean, it's very hard for Irish people to kind of understand, because you automatically judge everything by your own systems, you know. And we obviously live in a highly developed country. It's not like that in Mauritius, you know. And I suppose that's the real shame, because whenever people are looking at destinations for the honeymoons and they're thinking of the paradise, you think of places like Mauritius because you see these great hotels. But I mean, the reality is it's in a very underdeveloped country, and you're basically just in a big resort.
Yeah, it could be anywhere in the world. It could be in Jamaica, it could be in Mauritius, it could be anywhere.
It could be anywhere.
And you don't really have too much contact with the reality of life for the ordinary Mauritians.
Not at all. I mean, you're there in the resort and then that's it. And unfortunately, it's just everything's fine until something goes wrong. Do you know? And when something goes wrong, you are on your own, and it was a very hard lesson to learn.
I mean, their income in Mauritius is so dependent on the tourist euro, the tourist dollar.
Yeah.
You can understand, although not forgive, the rush to judgment, the rush to make an arrest, the rush to do something because they wanted to get themselves off the front pages as quickly as possible and get business back as usual. You
could see that rush, but at the same time, they had, you know, when one of the murderers actually admits what happened through a testimony, then you're not really rushing that much. When you have an eyewitness seeing the two guys come out of the room, then you're not rushing that much. The problem is, which I have learned over this 3 years and dealing with the PSNI and how different investigations like this proceed, they didn't work enough on covering up the other angles where a defence team could pick holes in their case. You know, I think it's pretty fair to say that they probably just said, okay, look, we have the personal testimony, we have the eyewitness, I think we're okay here, and they didn't go as far as covering
the manner angles. In which these testimonies may have been achieved from these individuals is also a thing open for question. We don't want to prejudice any future case that may arise in Mauritius about this. I saw one of the newspaper headlines suggesting that they wanted you back over, and maybe I was wrong in interpreting it this way, but the suggestion was that you weren't helping them out.
Yeah.
But the opposite is in fact the case.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's interpretation, Pat, really, and there is a bit of a breakdown, I suppose, in the communication and the way kind of the Mauritians would speak, but I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, I mean, from the time that the two guys were acquitted, I mean, I really have worked tirelessly. I've been in contact with the Mauritian authorities on a monthly basis, and the chief inspector that made those comments, I would be frequently emailing him. I have been over to London to see the Mauritian ambassador. I've been, just before Christmas, I was in spending 5 hours with PSNI because there was questions that the Mauritians had sent over for me just to ask to aid there. So I mean, I really do kind of feel alone, because there's myself and my sister Claire who've done everything, and thankfully we've had very good support from the PSNI. But apart from that, there's nothing. And when something happens over in Ireland, you have the benefit of a victim support system, so you always have somebody from the guards or from the PSNI, filling you up to date with what's happening in the process. You simply don't have that, so that's where I suppose the patience has to come into it.
So you and your sister have to kind of keep in touch, keep on top of things. There's no one there to tell you this is the sequence of events that's happening right now. This is how far we're on in our new investigation, etc., etc.
That's exactly what it's like. And I suppose from they've maybe learned their lessons from the last time, and I understand that everything they're trying to keep everything under wraps, but you just want to kind of see how things are proceeding. You don't actually have to know details, but you want to know, right now, today, where does the case lie? Yeah. And that can be very frustrating.
Now, at the beginning of all of this, you were in the frame as not the prime suspect, but one of the prime suspects. It's often the case, and you see it on all the crime dramas and so on, that the husband is always, or a member of the family is always, the finger of suspicion pointed at them. You knew you were completely innocent of all of this. I mean, this was a terrible tragedy to befall you. How did it feel as someone in that position where you've had no hand, act or part in Michaela's death, and to see yourself portrayed in this way?
Well, it didn't really bother me at all, to be quite honest, Pat. I mean, what people think isn't really of importance to me. I mean,
no, but were you worried that the chain of events in a different jurisdiction might lead to you being charged for something that you did not do?
Yeah, well, I suppose there was that there possibility. How real that was and how long that was going to last, I suppose you never know. But at the very time now, I did think, God, this is going to get really, really nasty for me. But
I mean, we think it happened in Britain with the Birmingham Six and the Guildford Four, a particular set of a political climate at the time and the troubles in the north and so on. But people who were absolutely innocent had ended up behind bars. Yeah. Here are you, well distant from the people who might be able to support you in a situation like that, dealing with the police force whose competence you have no knowledge of.
Yeah. I know, it's quite ironic actually, because the defence team would have used the Birmingham Six and the Guildford Four quite a lot when they were referring to their own clients, but I suppose at that time it wasn't really, at that very, very time that it happened, Pat, it didn't really matter at that stage.
No, in the context of your loss.
Exactly, I mean, you were just completely broken anyway, but I suppose out in the trial when things were getting muddied and stuff, the only concern for me was that they're creating more doubt, and I knew that was going to benefit the defence team. That was my only concern. I didn't care if people were, and I think something like 75%. They ran a TV debate or a poll during the trial in Mauritius. Yeah. How they did this, I don't know, but they asked, who's responsible for Michaela's murder, and 75% of the Mauritian people said that I was, but I mean,
you were aware of everyone at home and the people, members of your family and the Hart family who came out. They knew exactly what the situation was. So the people close to you had total belief in you. Yeah. But that does not necessarily help if you're before a court in a foreign country.
That's the problem. I mean, it's if people are starting to doubt, not even if they're starting to think, oh, God, maybe it was the husband, but if they're starting to doubt that, God, maybe it wasn't these two men that are up on charges here, then that is the problem, and that's what worked, and that's where we are now.
How did you manage to get through all that time? I mean, you were, as you say, broken, as any new husband would be with the tragic and violent death of his wife just days into a honeymoon. How did you get through it?
Yeah, I suppose looking back now, the first number of months, I still felt that I was very much in shock, but I had great support there. My family and my friends really, really relied heavily on them, and also my faith. My faith in God was probably the number one factor that got me through that period, and I suppose allows me to start a new life and to progress and to not be consumed by that incident. I'd say that is the number one factor, and thank God I have that, because it really did work a wonder for me.
Now, Mickey Hart was in this studio talking about the same thing, how his faith got him through and continues to. I mean, he talks to Michaela, and I'm sure you do too. But was that faith did you ever question it at any point, saying, how could this happen to me?
I didn't ever question, my faith, and I never actually asked the question, why would this happen to me? Yeah. I mean, I just never really, it just never really entered my head like that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, on a human level, of course, you'd be wondering how on earth something as tragic could happen, you know, to someone. And it was a hard time for me to come to terms with what actually happened to Michaela herself, having to go through what happened.
Yeah.
And that bothered me quite a lot.
Because you think of what
of course,
her last moments were
last
like.
moments, you know, and the fact that you weren't there, and that was very, very difficult. But then the more, I suppose, the rawness started to leave, then I started to think of it in a different way, and I kind of reconciled it in my head that, you know, it would have been a very short period of time, and for Michaela, and she probably would have went unconscious quite early. And then, whilst it wasn't God's decision, people have said that to me in the past, and it's probably just trying to, you know, make me feel better about it. But it was God's decision to take her on board at that stage, you know. I mean, everybody's got free will. There's terrible people can do terrible things. But the biggest thing for me now, and why I'm able to kind of start a new life and to be happy and to be optimistic and to be hopeful, is because I know where Michaela is now. That is the biggest thing, and I know that she's very happy where she is, and that I suppose is a big thing. Yeah.
Were there times when you thought you never could start again? You know, that you and Michaela would be joined spiritually, emotionally, for the rest of your life, and that there would be no new beginning?
Yeah, you did, you know, because I suppose when you get so close to someone and then you obviously, you know, you marry them, you really do become as one. So then when that's kind of torn apart, then where does that leave you? You almost lose your identity, you know. And I suppose for myself, I kind of just got caught in this big whirlwind, and it was just John and Michaela. And then whenever anybody would have seen me, they would have just thought of this terrible incident, and you do kind of lose a bit of your identity in that. And, you know, I didn't want that to be the defining feature of my life. So I started, you know, to, I suppose, on a conscious level, just to start to reclaim my identity, you know, start to get into the things that I'm passionate about again, start to get into my football, started to get into my work, started to get into the charity work which has started, and you kind of find yourself building a new life. I
mean, we talk about the Hart family and the McAreavey family, but there's the other family, the GA family.
Yeah, there is, of course, you know, and you would have never known the benefit of it to anyone as much as I did, I don't think, you know. Like the GA is much more than a sporting organisation, as you know. It's just, it really is a big family, as you said, Pat, and the guys down at the club in Tullalish were fantastic with me, you know, just real good friends, and just cracking away and being normal with you, which is
but
what
everyone would know
what you're looking.
When you're playing against another club, I mean, they didn't go easy on you because of your troubles, did they?
Well, maybe if you asked them nicely, they might have went easy for the first couple of years, I don't know. But, oh no, they were, like, I mean, everybody was great. And, like, you went hammer and tongs for the hour on the football pitch. And then somebody would come up after you and just say, I hope you're keeping all right. You know, and it's just a small few words, but it meant a lot. So, and even on Down, throughout County Down and further afield, people really showed their support.
But no quarter offered and no quarter given on the football field.
No, and you wouldn't want it any other way.
No, you wouldn't want it. Look, will you stay with us, John? We'll take a quick break because I want to talk about the foundation and other things after this. John McAreavey is with me in studio. Now, John, on your Twitter account you have a quote from Nelson Mandela. As I walked out the door towards the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. Why is that quote so important to you?
Well, a quote from an extraordinary man. I think anybody that can spend that long in jail and know that he's there unlawfully, and for him to come and say that after all that time, you could only imagine what it would be like for him.
Because so much of his life had passed behind bars.
Absolutely, and probably, you know, the real fruits of his life, you know, where he'd been a kind of a young man and been able to accomplish so much. Look what he's accomplished after he came out. So if you can imagine what he could have done, you know, in that space of 20 plus years. But I think it's a great lesson for all of us, that everybody is going to suffer in their lives, you know, whether it's small or big, and people are going to do things to you, and you always have the choice. You have the choice how that affects you, and that is the key message that I've taken from that quote, that you can either choose to be bitter, to be vengeful, or you can decide that I'm going to put this here to the side and I'm going to live my life, because you choose your own destiny.
It brings us to the Michaela Foundation and what it is and how it works.
Yeah, well, the Michaela Foundation was formed in 2011, so we're 3 years in the go, and we aim simply to inspire, educate and support young people throughout Ireland so that they can kind of live a fun, confident, faith-filled life. So we have a range of initiatives in how we go about achieving that. Last year we ran 7 summer camps in 7 different counties. This year we'll be doing 14
What age
summer
group
camps.
will be?
Well, they're all for girls aged 11 to 13. This is our first phase of summer camps. We do intend to move it on to a different age bracket and also to include fellas. Fellas is a wee bit more difficult in trying to, because summer camps, by and large, they're everywhere, but they're very kind of sport orientated in Ireland. We wanted to do something different for girls that weren't particularly into sport and wanted to kind of explore other areas. But yeah, 11 to 13, a very young, impressionable age when you're making perhaps that jump from primary school into secondary. So what we do, we work with these girls for a full week. The summer camp is all broken down into 5 different elements. It's fun, faith, fashion, Irish and well-being. So we organise activities around those different themes, and they've just been hugely successful. In 2012 we ran a pilot summer camp in Tyrone. Last year I said we did 7, and this year we're going to do 14 in 13 different counties, including Dublin, Kildare and Cork, as far down as Cork. So we want to put a camp in every different county in Ireland.
And the reaction from the girls themselves, what do they get out of it?
It's extraordinary, because you only have a week to actually work with these young girls, and as you can imagine, 80 young girls coming in at the start of the week, they might be a bit bashful, they might be a bit but by the end of the week they're really, really expressing themselves, and they've met new friends. And the payback kind of for me is, suppose, whenever parents are writing into you and emailing you and coming up to you and saying, my child is actually a different person now, and it's extraordinary. You really wouldn't anticipate the effect that you're having, but they're able to kind of express themselves. They're talking more, they're praying more, which is faith is a big dimension to the Michaela Foundation as a whole. So it really is wonderful, and we're doing much more than summer camps. We're doing retreats, we're doing workshops, lots of different things.
People listening to you, John, see how positive you are about life in general, in spite of what you've been through, and maybe they are themselves coping with stress and grief and all of that, and they'll be wondering, where does this inner strength come from? I mean, were you always this person? Did you always have that inner strength that comes from?
Well, I'm not really sure. I suppose you don't really know what's there until you have to draw on it. I suppose from a young age I was always a confident young guy, and I was always, anything that I was doing that I was passionate about, and I believed in what I was doing, I was able to just put my mind to it and go with it. But yeah, I suppose I always remember my father would have spoke to me when I was young, and this would be a common joke in our house, because Dad would say lots of different things to us, and he thinks that sometimes we're not listening, but we all do, and we all pick up his words of wisdom. But I always remember one thing he used to tell me when I must have been about 13 or 14, and I later learned that it was actually from the book of the 4 agreements, and it was the premise is basically, anybody can say anything to you or do anything to you, but it's up to you. You always have the power to decide what you do with that. It usually is a reflection of someone else. It's got nothing to do with you, and that kind of stuck with me. And once I believed in that, and once I learned about that, it gives you so much freedom. So it kind of just all spawned from
I've
that.
often thought of that thing of carrying a chip on your shoulder, about somebody. Well, you're the one who's carrying it. The other guy that you have the chip about doesn't even know, or bearing a grudge.
Absolutely, and how much time and energy do you actually want to give to people that actually cause you pain, that cause you stress and cause you grief? Now, it's complicated. I mean, I can only ever talk about my personal situation, but I think it is transferable to other situations, and it's a lot for young people these days. There's so many different pressures, and it's easy to get down, you know. And I think a lot of people get frustrated because they don't know. They want to actually become a happier person, but they don't actually know. They don't have the tools. And maybe that's something that we should be looking at as an organisation in schools and different groups. Are we equipping young people with the tools to be able to deal with the challenges that life will inevitably bring?
And to view the trivial as trivial.
As trivial, yeah, it really is. I mean, you know, when you get older, you start to kind of see what are the most important things in life. And, you know, in my situation, again, like, everything gets highlighted, all the nonsense, and you really do come down to, well, what is life all about? And you kind of see what is important. So if you're able to kind of see that at a younger level, maybe you wouldn't get as bogged down in things.
And all the stuff that gets in the way. You've been thrust into the public eye for all the wrong reasons, and everything you do is publicised, including the fact that you're in a new relationship now. Did you have any kind of qualms about entering a new relationship? Did you go to the Hart family and tell them about it, or what happened?
No, well, yeah, I didn't have any qualms at all. I mean, it was just something that happened. It didn't. It wasn't as if I was going about looking.
You weren't on the dating sites?
I wasn't on the dating sites. No, not that there's any problem with dating sites, but I wasn't on them. As it happened, actually, it was just after a huge event we ran in 2012, the foundation, the Match for Michaela, and a week after, myself and good friends went down for a trip in Galway, and because it was a very busy time over the previous 8 weeks, and we kind of just wanted to relax, and it just happened to bump in to a lovely girl, and we just started talking, and we just connected, and it kind of just blossomed from there. I had no qualms or worries. I didn't feel as if I was doing anything wrong, because it just happened naturally, and I firmly believe that it was something that God put in my path. And I mean, you know, you asked about the Harts. I mean, the Harts are wonderful people, and they were nothing but supportive, and still are. And you know, even before, you know, that there, when I had met Tara, they were always keen to support me, and they always assured me that anything that happened in the future with, you know, different relationships
they
or whatever.
Understood that you were young and that you still had your whole life in spite of the loss of Michaela.
Yeah, and you know, I'm very close with them people, and
have they met
I'll
Tara
always
yet?
be. Well, Mark has. But the other family members have. It just hasn't been a natural time, I suppose. Tara lives in Dublin, and obviously they're up in Tyrone, so there's not that. But you know, maybe in time, when the time is right. But no, I mean, I've been very, very fortunate. Tara's a wonderful, wonderful person.
And you speak the same language, accountancy.
Yeah, accountancy. You know, two born accountants. But no, it wasn't the accountancy that we were passionate about each other now. But no, we got on really well, and she suppose we're very good friends, and that relationship continues to blossom. And I'm just so thankful that she's came into my life. She is a wonderful person, and I love spending time with her.
Right. And the whole presence of Michaela in your life, because she is part of your life, she will always be part of your life, that doesn't get in the way of...
It doesn't. I mean, as you can imagine, things have probably been difficult at times, you know, trying to kind of balance the complexity of that, you know, both for myself and for Tara. And but I mean, Michaela will always be a part of my life, and you know, she still is. I mean, I suppose why I'm able to kind of go forward and to live a life and is because I don't see Michaela as been completely lost. Michaela is just in a different place now, and I'm very happy with where she is. You know, she's with God. I mean, how could I want anything more there? So, but it can be difficult at times, but we've been able to kind of get through all that.
Some of the texts coming in from David in Cork. This young man is a great example to everyone in the country, and a very important one. My daughter went to a camp in Clonus. Terrific camp.
That's
recommended to all. So
that's excellent to
so
hear.
there you are. Look, John, thank you very much for coming in this morning and just spending time with us. It's really been a privilege and a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
All the best, John.
Thanks.